All right, welcome to today's video. We are going to be walking through the full process of taking your project from an idea into a blueprint, into an outline, and get you start drafting. So we're going to show you how much easier that is going to be and how much faster that's going to be in Paging Poly because of the parsing and because of how we have things set up with our prompts and everything else. So I'm really excited to show you this because these are features that, to my knowledge, I have not seen in any other AI writing software. And so I'm really excited to show this and share this with you. So we're going to get right into it. So I created an 11-step prompting system that is roughly based on Snowflake. It's an iterative process that goes from concept into chapter summaries. And so we're just going to go bit by bit here. And I actually just noticed I created an additional 9, and I don't think I labeled it properly. Let's find out. 9. Yes, I did not. Okay, so I'm gonna edit this really quickly and add it to my blueprinting folder. There we go. So there are some optional steps in here. World building would be optional, and then you could use either of the 9s. This 9 alt is actually using romancing beats for the act summaries, which gets a little bit more nitty gritty into doing romance. You could easily just use the regular 4-act outline. I'm working on having a couple of these though for kind of prefabbed outlining setups, right? So romancing beat is a big one for romance. There's also Save the Cat, which you could use for pretty much any genre, and there's a couple variations of that. So I'm working on having some of those. So what I haven't done yet, though, is turn this into a sequence, which is what I want. I want a human in the loop sequence. So I'm going to create a new sequence. I'm going to create this as blueprinting. I'm going to put it in my blueprinting folder. This is going to be human in the loop. And now I'm going to just start adding my prompts. And one of the nice things is if you switch to the blueprinting folder, it will save you your spot. So you can really come in here and just very quickly build out this sequence. And so I'm going to do that really quickly. And I do actually have an alternative in the world building too for if you're not doing fantasy. World building could be great though if you're doing a interconnected series. So if you're doing interconnected standalone series for like romance, sometimes like small towns have like town politics. If you think about Gilmore Girls, there was like a lot going on in the world of Stars Hollow. And so you can use world building in that way. Just a quick aside. And then I'm going to put both 9s in this because I'm probably going to switch back and forth. And 11. And then the other add step I'm going to do is I do this for all of mine. So if I go to general, I'm going to have my go as well. And I'm going to put the go at the very top. I'm going to just drag him to the top. Go is words before inactive documents using context, continue, or answer in the same style. This is basically your chat enter button. So if I am in the midst of this process and I want to expand or ask questions or brainstorm back and forth with the model, I would use that go. Okay, so now I'm going to save sequence. So we have blueprinting now. Actually, no, let's try that because we're going to be using that. And we're going to come back to project. Oh, actually, we're not going to come back to project. We're in the library. And I'm actually have, let's see. I have some little stand-in book covers here. And I think I'm actually going to use one of my vector ones. And yeah, we're going to do Dreaming of You December is what we're going to be brainstorming. So we're going to do a new project. I'm going to name it Dreaming of You December, which will make sense when we go into what this book is about. It's going to be a novel. We're not doing a series right now. This is the nice thing too, is you can edit. If you have book 1, but you didn't know it was going to be a series, you can always go in and edit that to the series and the number in series at any point. It's going to be a whole holiday romance. We're going to be doing a target word count of, I think we want to keep this maybe short, maybe almost like a novella. So let's do 40,000. And actually we're going to switch it to a novella. I'm going to put in 2 because like I said, the blueprint and the outlines are actually going to take care of our actual chapter creation. But this will just give us a manuscript folder and a couple chapter files to get us started. AI system prompt. I have in another spot. So I'm going to leave that empty right now. And we're going to also, this is just me because I have this stuff set up. I'm going to create project first, and then I'm going to come in and edit to add the cover image. It doesn't always, but every once in a while this will close down and then I have to re-enter everything. It's just annoying. So I like to create it and then I add that in after. I think it's one of those things where, especially if your internet is maybe a little bit janky, it can throw you out. So I actually have the holiday romance prompt in this one. So I'm going to create edit and I'm going to grab all of this. I'm going to Control C and cancel. And then I'm going to open it here and I'm going to paste it right on in. So this just has a really quick system prompt for what we're going for. It's to write a holiday romantic comedy. And there's ethical guidelines for not making fun of people you shouldn't be making fun of. Key scene beats, character approach, writing style, all that good jazz is in there. Okay. So now we're going to open up Dreaming of December. So we have a manuscript folder, and then we have 2 files. So now what we need is a blueprint file. And we just had a glitch. Hold on just 1 second. Okay, I couldn't recreate that. Erroring out. If that does happen and the screen goes blank on you when you try to create something, just do a refresh. And typically that will fix the issue and the blueprint would show up. I tried to just recreate that to see if there was a bigger glitch or bug and it didn't happen again. So I don't know what happened there, but we're just going to move on. Okay, let me close out of those things. Okay, so right now we need a seed idea. That's going to be the first step. I'm going to close my sidebar because I don't really need that. And I'm going to go into focus, so I don't need the top bar open. And we are going to change this. Open up this. I'm going to go all. I'm going to go Sherlock, which is we're going to do dash. We're not going to do think. It's a new cloaked model that's on OpenRouter right now, and she's free. So I've been playing with her. Honestly, I think it might be a new Grok model. It has a pretty large context window. I think it's 1.8 million. Actually, I can show you really quickly. Because if I go all and I type in Sherlock, it will tell me, yes, it's 1.8 million. It will also show pricing is $0, which is nice. So we've got that. And max output at 4,000 should be fine right now. I'd probably turn this up to 8,000 once we get into chapter by chapter with scenes. It can run out of room really quickly with doing that. Okay, so we're going to cancel. So we're on Sherlock. Okay, we are going to do, so Dreaming of You December, one of the ideas is that they are soulmates and they have been dreaming about each other and past lives for years. And then suddenly, one December, they actually meet in real life. Do they get together and finally have a happy ever after, or are they doomed to repeat their mistakes? Question mark. Okay. So that's that. We just have that saved. Sequences. We are going to open Blueprint. So we are on concept discovery. So this is the idea seed. And so now we're just going to hit the concept discovery and we're going to go. So now it's going to give me 5 different options that are high concept that have a holiday vibe because that is in the prompts. And this will be, the sequence file will be available in the Discord as well as the prompts themselves. Okay. Working on 5. The nice thing about Sherlock too, I'm not going to get into that in this video because I would have to blur things, but Sherlock is completely uncensored. So if you're doing anything with like body horror or you're doing a spicier romance, Sherlock can handle it, which is one of the main reasons that I think it might be a Grok model. Okay, so right now you will see too that this is already geared for the blueprint parsing because we have ideas, which is, these are idea file types. And honestly, we could have concept options. We could have each concept as a different file. That would be unnecessary. But so we have this where it would already parse. So if I actually come up here to the parsing, it would show 7 sections, continue to preview. It would show that there'd be 1 folder created and there'd be 1 file created because this is a folder, this is a file level. Okay, really quickly, I'm going to go through these and I'm just going to, because I might actually put this out on one of our known AI pen names. So I'm going to pause. I'm going to read through all of these. And I will also be doing in the Discord, I'll probably be doing a export of the projects of some of these projects so that you can poke through them if you want. So I might actually be putting some of the concepts and stuff into files in the Discord. Okay, so I'm going to pause really quick. Okay, so I didn't like any of this, which happens sometimes. And one of the things that I'm like, oh, that's something. So it is designed to do small town romance because it's a holiday romance, and that's pretty on par. One of the things that we didn't say in the idea seed is that if they've been dreaming about each other for a very long time and haven't actually met, and they're also centered in a small town, that means that one of them just moved. So one of them just moved into the small town. And the other is a beloved constant figure in town. We also need some sort of holiday festival or holiday twist. And let's also do Grumpy Sunshine. I'm a sucker for Grumpy Sunshine. Okay, so I've just added to that. And you know what? We are actually going to switch to a model that I know to be a little bit better at brainstorming. So we're going to do Gemini 2.5 Pro instead. One of the things that I will be pausing a lot is Gemini 2.5 Pro is a thinking model. Because of the thinking model, and it's also a very highly used model, those are longer to respond a lot of times. So it might take a good minute for him to percolate before he spits something out. So I'm going to pause in between just so you don't have to sit through the generations on each one, because it can take a little bit. Drink some water and just let him do his thing. It's usually what I do. All right, so we're going to go ahead and try this again, and I'm going to pause and come back when he's actually generated. All right, and once he does actually get going, he usually spits out pretty fast. Gingerbread Ghostwriter, I already love the sound of that. All right. So already I'm liking the sound of this better. We had a single down on the other one and it mirrors this style. I was like, no. Okay, we're gonna approve. And you will notice if this were a chapter file type, for instance, this would switch to a header, this would switch to a header, these would switch to a header, this would be bold. This is in markdown format, so it's using these symbols instead. That's what we want so that it parses properly. Just a little aside. Okay, we do have some very AIE names, which I would obviously change, but we've got a grumpy 5th generation Christmas tree farmer in Mistletoe, Washington. I do love that. Okay, and a bubbly historical preservationist who just moved to town to escape academia and write a book on local folklore. Okay, I'm loving that one already. Let's see what else we've got so that you guys can pause and read if you want. Kian is a grumpy reclusive glassblower, a town legacy in St. Nick's Hollow, known for his breathtaking art but cold demeanor. Noelle is I love the idea her name was Noelle, is a relentlessly optimistic sunshine baker, a newcomer opening a shop called Dream a Little Treat. That's actually not a terrible name for a bakery from what I've seen with AI. Dream a Little Treat is actually cute because it ties into our premise. Snow Globe Prophecy. Julian is the town librarian and historian of Solstice Creek, a grumpy man of logic and facts who is beloved for his encyclopedia knowledge of the town. Sky is a perpetually sunny travel blogger and photographer, a newcomer only passing through until a blizzard traps her indefinitely. Like that. Got forced proximity. Okay. Dash is a grumpy, best-selling thriller author living a reclusive life in Holly, North Carolina. He's in local enigma nobody really knows. Poppy is an endlessly creative and sunny pastry chef who just moved to town with the singular goal of winning the local gingerbread competition. Holly, North Carolina. Their shared dream is of a 1920s baker and writer whose ambitions led to bitter rivalry. That's a little bit interesting. Okay. Mistletoe mix-up. Graham is a town's grumpy but adored dog kennel owner who openly prefers the company of sled dogs to humans. Paloma is a hyper-organized, sunshiny event planner from LA, newcomer hired to save the town's failing winter festival. I like that. Garland, Alaska. Hoping its Northern Lights Noel Festival put it on the map. Paloma recently adopted a chaotic corgi, escapes and leads her on a wild chase through the town square, culminating in the dog launching himself joyfully into Graham's arms. They lock eyes. She recognizes him instantly from her recurring dream of a quiet, peaceful life on a farm with a kind gentleman. He recognizes her as the woman from his recurring anxiety dream, a whirlwind of chaos who always appears right before a catastrophe. I am in love with that. I used to have a corgi, so that might be why. I don't know. And I love like the idea that both of them are having the recurring dream, but that like is an anxiety nightmare. Borderline. I think that's fun. Okay, we are going with mistletoe mix up. You will also see this ended here before the emotional promise. My guess is because it is using thinking credits on Gemini Pro. So the 4,000 might not be enough to get us through the thinking as well as the generations. So that is probably why this cut off. That's okay. We're just going to remove this part. And this is an option. I'm going to reopen the sidebar. What you can do too, if I wanted to use, because some of these other ideas are not bad, and I might even want to switch the town settings to be the same town, and these alternatives could be sequels. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to duplicate this. I'm going to rename this as sequels question mark. I'm going to do a check. I'm going to remove the one that we chose, which is the last one, which is the mistletoe mix-up. Okay. And I'm going to also remove this part because we don't need that part. Okay. And then that's been... Oh, did I just do that on the wrong one? I totally did. Okay. What we're just going to do is... So I'm in... Okay, I'm in a blueprint now. Okay. So I'm going to remove all this. Concept options. Okay. And we'll leave that part for that. And then sequels, we'll remove the part. Boom. And we'll remove 5 because we're using that for the current. Cool. So we'll leave sequels alone. And we'll come back into Blueprint, which now only has our core seed idea. Actually, I'm going to add to this book. Is called Dreaming of You December. Okay, book title. That's my brain does interesting things with words. Okay, so we've got this. And do we need anything else? Let's go ahead and hide this again. Bring this back over here. We don't have an emotional hook, but we've got hook and sales pitch next. So I'm just gonna roll with the hook and sales pitch. And again, this takes a second, so I will pause and come back when that is done. Okay, so now we have hook and sales pitch. You'll also notice too that this is all going to be in the ideas folder because these are double hash. We have a single hash up here. So if we come back up here, continue to preview, we now have 3 files. We have a concept options, a hook, and a sales pitch. Just a little aside for you, which is actually something else that I just thought about. I'm still not super used to the fanciness of the parsing. I'm just like, oh, I literally could have just changed and added a double hash for sequels to the above, and then just change this to chosen concepts. So actually, I think we're going to do that really quickly. No, I'm not. No, I'm not. Just kidding. I'm not going to do that because I don't want it to see the other books. I don't want it to see the other ideas. Just kidding. No. You could do that, but I'm going with the chosen, and that's going to be cleaner so that I don't have to worry about it pulling anything from somewhere else. Also, the names were not terrible. Graham and Paloma and Garland, Alaska. I'm not hating any of those names, which is unusual. I don't feel like either of those are super common. So I'm into that. Okay. She's been dreaming of her soulmate for years. He's been having anxiety dreams about a walking catastrophe. This December, they're about to find out they've been dreaming of the exact same person. Okay. Of the exact same person. They're dreaming of each other. Well, now I probably changed the wording on that. Hyper-organized event planner Paloma has a 5-step plan for everything, except for the man who keeps appearing in her dreams. A kind, quiet soul promising a peaceful future. When she moves to tiny Garland, Alaska to save its failing Northern Lights Noel festival, she finally meets him. There's just one problem. Graham, the town's beloved and very grumpy sled dog owner, isn't the gentle farmer from her dreams. He's a gruff Alaskan who prefers the company of his huskies to humans. And while Paloma instantly recognizes him as her destiny, he recognizes her as the star of his recurring anxiety dream, a whirlwind of chaos that always precedes disaster. Now Paloma's grand plan to save the festival hinges on a spectacular sled dog race. The only person with enough dogs is Graham, who wants his perfectly trained pack and his orderly life nowhere near her brand of joyful mayhem. Forced to work together under the twinkle of northern lights, their clashing energies ignite in a different kind of spark, in a cozy, laugh-out-loud romance for fans of grumpy sunshine and faded love. Paloma must prove to the man of her dreams that she isn't a nightmare, even if it means embracing a little holiday chaos. Okay, I love that. So now we're going to go into narrative synopsis. I don't really have any changes to add, so we're just going to pop right into the narrative. I'm going to pause until this rounds us up, and I'll be back. Okay, we're back, and we've got a summary. I'm going to approve this, and I'm just going to add a summary here, just so that we have that labeled. I am actually going to look. Oops. Printing. This is just something good. If something doesn't like format the way you want, where.com, we're in the classic. Oh, it is supposed to do that and it just didn't, which happens. I could probably rephrase that to get it to be more consistent, so I'll look at that later. But that's just something you can see is, oh, if it's not formatting properly, why didn't it format properly? All right, so we've got a summary. We've got Paloma Diaz has been dreaming of a man. Newly adopted corgi Nacho. Do we like the name Nacho for the corgi? I do. I do have the name Nacho for the corgi. Okay. Graham Blackwood. All right, we've got our first AI name, so Blackwood is not going to work for me. Do we have his name more than once? Let's just do a find. So this is our find. We're going to look for Blackwood. We're going to do a search. There's only one instance of it. Okay. So I'm just going to come here. Instead of Blackwood, his name is Graham Hunt. I think that kind of makes sense. Okay. Graham Hunt, owner of Garland Fled Dog Kennel, has also been dreaming his dreams, however, not peaceful. He is a beloved town fixture, respected for his competence and tolerated for his grumpiness. Worlds collide on Paloma's first day in town. Okay, he's real. For Graham, the recognition is just as immediate, but far more terrifying. It's her. The woman from his nightmare is standing flushed and breathless in the middle of his town, and her chaotic energy practically vibrating in the crisp winter air. Jumble of fated attraction and profound misunderstanding, Paloma's grand plan to revitalize the festival hinges on a spectacular sled dog race. The Reindeer Rally, meant to be the grand finale. The only person with a team of prize-winning sled dogs is, of course, Graham. When she approaches him with her meticulously planned proposal, he shuts her down flatly. Forced together by a meddling town council. Love that. Okay. Okay, so they're keeping the dream secret. They're like, we don't want people to think we're weird. Day of the Reindeer Rally, grand gesture. Obviously, I just want to put a little aside here. If I were doing this on a real basis and not just a tutorial basis, every step of this would be a lot different. It would be a lot longer and more time consuming for one. But typically the ideas that I have, usually I have a really good idea of the characters I want. I have plot points that I've already thought about, or scenes even that I've already thought about. And I would be adding those in. I would also be doing question back and forth. And I'll probably do a video about blueprinting and brainstorming, having the AI ask you questions that then trigger a creative response from you to go a lot deeper. Because one of the things I always want to emphasize is doing all of the testing of Paging Polly has given me a really interesting insight into the models and how they work. And one of the key things to remember is that LLMs are essentially really detailed and really complex word generators at the end of the day, of predictive text borderline. And so if you use prompts from somebody else, me or anyone, if you don't add in anything of yourself to those prompts, you will end up with what essentially breaks down to, I've seen approximately 5 to 10 general vibes. So even if the names change and some of the settings change, you end up with essentially the same vibe. I've had seed ideas that was paranormal romance, killer mermaids, and a vampire. And if I have that as the idea seed and I do 10, 20 different generations, which sometimes happens when you're testing things, I noticed immediately that there were really only a handful of vibes. Generally everything else was the same. The core plot was more or less the same. Maybe an occupation would change or a name would change. There's only so much that would shift. And so I just want to make it really clear doing this process, I am going through this in a very streamlined process because I'm showing you how the software works, not how to do the craft side of it as much. And these prompts are designed obviously for the brainstorming process, but I would add in a lot more back and forth. And that's where the go button would be used in between, is talk to me about other meet cutes and let's talk about other ways that they could be forced together and that kind of stuff. So I just wanted to really quickly insert that if I were going to do this book as a more serious endeavor and not just a tutorial, that is something that I would do. And the more work and the more you add into the blueprinting and the brainstorming process, the better end result you'll get for obvious reasons, I feel like. Okay, so just saying that, we're going to move on to the style guide because this is a tutorial. So we're going through these steps as quickly as possible so that you can get the show on the road, so to speak. So we are going to come here and we are going to do style guide, and I will come back once this has executed. And we're back. Okay, so we have, you'll notice there's essentially 3 different versions of the style guide. This is broken down by globals, things that you would have turned on pretty much all the time that you're drafting, and then things that you might not have turned on a chapter basis, depending. So we have these broken into separate files so that you can control those independently. So we're going to approve this. And we've got the author voice, so this would be a global. This is the general author voice of this pen name. So obviously, if I was, maybe this is book 1 of not only this series, but the first of a new pen name, like a holiday romance pen name, then I would share this author voice with other books in the series, and I would also copy it into other projects for that pen name. Just a heads up there. Okay. Authorial voice is your witty best friend whispering over your shoulder during a Hallmark movie. Vivid, clean, immediate, wholeheartedly, zero saccharine. Okay. Then we have POV voices. So this, we might actually even want to be its own files. So I might even turn this, instead of a 3 dash, I might turn it into a 2 dash so that these are separate POV voices. So that's just dependent, but I'm doing AI context packet probably. So if I were doing that, then this wouldn't matter as much, but yeah, you know what? We're going to do that. So we're going to copy this and we're going to replace it here. And actually, we're going to X this out. And then do it down here too, so that we have POV voices as their own, so that I could turn on Paloma's POV voice for Paloma's chapters and the same program's chapters, because we'll do alternating. And then we have tone rules. So this is general tones. This would also be a global. And again, I would really look through this carefully, especially with grumps. I have noticed a lot of times, like there's something in here where it's like really short. Yeah, like monosyllabic exterior. I would do some tests with this on his chapters, and depending, I would alter his style guide. If that started ending up being a little bit too short, a little bit too much of the time, I would alter that. So that's just a little side there. Okay, so we've got our style guide. Great. So next up is our main characters. This is split into global and arc. So similar thing to the style guides, having multiple style guides. We have multiple main character files because there is a global, which is mostly how they look and like tone of voice and that kind of stuff. And then there's arc, which is something you do not want the chapter by chapter model to get its little grubby hands on, typically speaking. The models are getting better at nuance and at subtlety, but it still can really pull things that you don't want it to pull yet. And a big one is internal wounds. It will shove that internal wound in your face every 2 seconds, every 2 sentences. So having the arc be only turned on if you're doing the AI context packet or for your own personal notes, where you would, so if you weren't using AI context packet, you'd have your chapter outline. What I would do is in the outline file is I would add in essentially beats where those internal wounds start flushing in. And I would write notes about that throughout if I were doing it on a big level for that without using the context packets. Okay, so we're going to do that and I will come back. I'm going to do the main characters so that you can see that split, and then we'll do the side characters. Be right back. We'll start generating. Okay, so we have our global and our arcs for our main characters. We're going to approve. And here we've got our global. So we've got appearance, personality, POV voice, skills, and relational tendencies. So this is an overall of who she is. She's a people pleaser. And then we have arc. So this again is the stuff that if you had it turned on every single chapter, a lot of times you are going to end up with it just really hammering you over the head with the wound or the lies she believes, the fear she has. It's going to get hit like a grenade. Typically, it does not weave that very well when you're doing chapter to chapter. It can do better at this in outline settings and in the context packets where it can pull pieces. And that's what you want from the arc, is you want to pull pieces and have it paced out. So having the arc separate, it allows you to differentiate, but still have this turned on with the chapter outline so that we get what she looks like, how she talks, all that good jazz. And we have the same thing for him, global and arc. Do we have transformation steps for her? Oh, we do. Perfect. Okay. So we're just going to, and another thing I always do is I add a couple extra lines. It just helps me see the differences in the sections, basically. And then with side characters, we do want to make sure that the character's one main heading is still there, and then the side character should be a double hash. So we'll come back after that is done. I'll be right back. Boop. And we're back, and I did do the double hash as it was supposed to, which is lovely. So we're going to approve. We've got June Gable. We have some alternative name ideas, which is nice. I'm actually fine with June Gable. I think that's also fine. Meddling Matriarch. You know what? Actually, let's do Betty Gable. Wait, is Betty Gable? That sounds like a famous person. Like an actress. We're going to keep it with June Gable because I think Betty Gable might actually be a person. So we don't want to end up in that area. Okay, and here we've got ISM for sure. The daily grind. The daily grind is every single coffee shop and every single AI book ever. So we're definitely not going to do daily grind. Let's see. The fact that Garland has a coffee shop, I think it's probably more of a diner. What is a diner name? Honestly, like I know it's boring, but June's Diner. I think that's probably, and if it's a diner, it's not a coffee shop. We're going to change that to a diner because I feel like that fits better. Yeah, the honor of June's, Garland's only diner. Yeah, we're just going to do that. I know it's boring, but I feel like that's like more accurate. Okay, we've got Tuck Riley, who's Graham's grounded friend and Grump to English translator. That's adorable. Tuck Riley, I think that's a fun name, actually. So we definitely don't want Marcus. Okay. Camilla Cami Reyes. So Reyes is more of an AI name than Hammy. I don't know why, but this is what came to me, so we're gonna do that. Oh, yeah. Okay, so I see. So it's supposed to be like another friend from LA. You know what? We're gonna go with Valdez. There we go. Okay. She's through FaceTime calls. Okay. Silas Blackwood, if this isn't a AI name through and through. Let's change it to, I like Wally. Oh, he's eccentric too? Perfect. Yeah, his name is definitely Wally. His name is Wally. I feel like Wally Walters is just such a perfect comedic weirdo name. We're gonna name him Wally Walters. And he runs Garland Goods and Oddities. I think that's fine. Hand-carved alien-themed Christmas ornaments. I love Wally already. Wally is my best friend. I want to know him. Okay. Accidentally ordering 500 pounds of glitter instead of 50. That sounds lovely. I love that. Okay. We've got Nacho the Corgi, a tiny agent of mayhem. Yes, that is every corgi ever. Okay. And then we have Luna, which is his key sled dog. I'm actually fine with Luna. Like that, I feel like that is actually a pretty on-the-nose husky name. And I have had huskies and corgis. So there you go. Okay. So we're going to go into locations next, and I will be back. We're going to skip world building. Like I said, we could do world building for like the town dynamic, but we're just going to skip over that. And we are going to use the regular 4-act outline instead of the romancing beat just for this purpose because this is more intensive. And so we'll just do this. And then I will show you where we're going to switch to an outline file instead of the blueprint. So that's coming up here in just a second. Where are we? Locations. Okay. So we're getting our locations. We got June Steiner. We've got the kennel and the town square. We've also town hall. You could technically also skip the locations and do locations as story Bible entries later after the locations have been made. I just like having this as a consistency thing. Again, ADHD, and for me to remember like physicalities of places is really hard. So even just having this as like notes for me, I feel is really helpful. So we've got locations, and then we're going to add a couple new lines. We're going to do the 4-act outline next. And then we're going to do, I think, chapters, and then we'll look at the prompt. I think I have it broken down into the outline at this stage. So we'll look at the prompt so that you can see that too. And we will be back after the 4-act outline is done. Okay, here we are. We've got each of the acts. Now, we could have the outline here, so I'm going to just approve because this is going to, so this would actually end up adding to one outline file. I'm just realizing because the double hash would be chapters. So we don't want to put it into the outline folder if we were going to be doing this. So I would be doing, what I would do is planning, so that this goes into a planning folder, so that if I wanted to save this, it would go into planning as a folder. Okay, and then these would be note files. Each of these would be a note file. And again, I would look through this very closely because usually, I would say, I don't know, like outlining is not necessarily the strongest thing that AI can do on its own. But if you add in a lot of your own bits and bobs to it, it can be really strong. We're not going to go into a whole lot of depth and detail because, again, this is a tutorial. But if I were going to be doing this as a more serious project, I would be really hammering in at this level. So even if I was like rocking and rolling with it, creating the characters and the locations and all of that jazz, this is where I would really start getting nitty gritty and getting my hands into things about what happened as we move forward. So just a heads up, that's what I would be doing. Okay, so now we're going to look at, because we are at 10 and 11. So these are the true outlining stages. So I'm going to look at the prompts. I'm in Classic so that I can preview. And okay, so we've got the chapters. This is using words before. So this is still happening in the regular document, but if we go here, this is using active documents. And so that is where we would shift to the new one. So I'm actually going to let that roll. We'll do the chapter summaries, and then I'll show you the chapter and scene breakdown from there. And again, if you are really getting your hands in the weeds on the summary, the very first summary, which I think is like 4 or 3, step 3, if you really get into the summary and make changes there, and then if you really make changes at this act level, the chapter summary should be more or less on the mark, and then you can just go through and fine tune and tweak that. And here you could also do something around how many chapters there are, depending. I actually kind of want to see what it recommends. It's probably going to be in the 20 to 24 range, I would imagine. That's usually where it sits. And we could actually guide that a little bit. So let's say no more than, we'll do 18 chapters. That's arbitrary, but, and see if it listens to us as well, because sometimes it will, sometimes it won't. But it is words before, so that should dictate that. So we're going to go ahead and click go on that. And then I'm going to pause and come back. Okay, and I forgot to expand the max tokens. And so she stopped on 15, which is what happens when you forget to expand the context or the max tokens on outlining. So I'm going to hit approve. And we are in the midst of chapter 15. What I'm going to do here, oh, not the arrow, I am going to turn this to 8,000, especially once we get to the chapter by chapter with scenes. That's going to be a whole thing. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to really quickly, I'm going to double check that I don't have any active documents. I don't, which is good. And then I'm just going to hit the go button so that it will continue where it left off. Because that is not the end of the story. You can see it just cut off midway, which if you were an open router looking at your activity would say length as the reason for stop instead of stop, which means that it just completed its thought. Okay, and we continued exactly where we left off, so that's perfect time. We should just have 18 as the final. And we do! Yay! Okay. And then I'm just going to remove this new line because it did continue. Sometimes if you hit continue, depending on the model, it will start at the chapter 15 and then continue. And otherwise, other times it will just like, oh, that was the last word. So there you go. Okay, so we have all of this here. And this is triple hash. And I want to look at, okay, so we don't, so these would be X. So what I'm going to just do, because this would be part of planning, is I'm just going to go chapters. And then these are triple hash, so that will land in a chapters file. So if we parse this with this included, that's what will happen if we want to keep these pieces, not just in the blueprint file, but in the other. And I'll show you what I do if I want the blueprint file essentially untouched, and then I want a different one that I clean, that I parse for. We'll show you that here in a second too. But right now we're going to, so we're in blueprint. So I'm going to come here. I am going to go to outline. I'm going to come to outline. And this is where I'm going to do the chapter and scene breakdown once I turn this on. So I've got this on. That becomes the active document. So this has my notes, what the book is titled. We've got all of the ideas here, the summary, we've got the acts, we've got the characters, etc., etc. So I'm not going to parse this yet. We're going to do the outline and then we're going to go through all the parsing. So I'm in outline and here I'm going to go chapter, scene, and breakdown. And again, if we open up prompts and we're on classic, if I go here, it will show you, it says using active documents, which is our blueprint file. Expand to outline, chapter X, scene X1, X2, etc. For each chapter include 2 to 4 scenes. Each scene includes, and we'll see, sometimes it will be like, oh, there's 2 scenes per chapter. Got it. And it won't go past that. So we shall see. Actually, you know what? We're going to edit this really quickly and we're going to do that. And we're going to also say, do this for all chapters in the previous summary. And each chapter should include 2 to 4 scenes. And each scene includes, okay, we're going to update. And then if we come back and then come back in, that should say chapter X, scene X, point X. So that should give the AI like a good idea of like how we want that to be worked. And then if we come here, we are going to hit play. And I already went in and I increased this to 8,000. Honestly, for this purpose, we might even need 16, but let's see where we get with 8,000. And that just gives us a safe mark. Okay. And we're going to go and we'll be back when this is done. Okay. And we are back. We have all 18 chapters and it's scenes created. So I'm going to hit approve. And I'm going to close out of sequences and I'm just going to show you what we've got. So at the very top, here's a detailed blah, blah, blah. So we can remove this with 2 to 4 scenes per chapter. So we can remove that. We've got outline as pound 1. We've got the chapters and scenes appropriately labeled, which means if I come here, we are going to immediately have chapter 2, 3, etc. We have POV right below it. And we've got all of our scenes. And you'll notice there's only 1 scene in 14, which I thought was interesting. I don't know if I've seen that generally. And we have 3 in 18. Otherwise, we mostly have 2 chapters, which honestly for a novella, I would be down. Just know that if you have a minimum and a maximum, a lot of times AI will go with the minimum. So that's just something to keep in mind. And we have all of that. So we have 18 chapters. We have 36 scenes. If we come back here, we've got this. Now, if you wanted to, there's a couple different ways you could do this, but in the blueprint, if we come all the way down, we have full chapter breakdowns here that if you wanted to, you could still have the chapter summary in addition to the scenes. This would be something that you would copy and paste into the larger outline, or when you're prompting this, say, I want a chapter summary as well as scene summaries. So those, what I would generally recommend if you want a chapter summary is in the prompt. We would go to the prompts. We'd go here and we'd go to edit and it would say, do this for all chapters in the previous summary, and each chapter should include 2 to 4 scenes. For each chapter, include a 1 paragraph summary in addition to the scene summaries. And that is really all you'd have to do. And you could update prompt, and then you could run this again if you were so inclined. So we're going to rock and roll with this. So we actually don't need this because that is just going to be the outline. Blueprint though, we can now come through here and we can clean this for our parsing. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to duplicate this. We got blueprint copy. So I'm going to change this to blueprint clean. And here I'm going to say OG. Okay, I'm going to drag this down here. Okay, so blueprint clean. I'm going to remove this. I'm going to leave ideas with chosen concept, the hook, and the pitch. I'm going to remove summary. Okay. Because I personally never use the summary. The reason the summary is in there, the reason the act summaries are in there in the chapters, and they're broken down that way is for an iterative process for the AI. I found it just works better if you go step by step and flesh it out a little bit more each time. You're going to end up with a better result. So that's the reason I don't have the chapter by chapter with scene all in one step. Instead, we go summary, which is the whole book in a couple paragraphs, and then we go act, and then we go chapter, and then we go chapter with scene. It creates an iterative process that creates a stronger outline than what you would get if you just say, give me an outline. We're going to leave style, because we definitely want style. And we've got characters, which is great. We don't need to worry about characters. Scroll down, we got side characters. And we've got locations. Now planning. If you wanted to, you could use the acts and the chapters. Since we have the OG, and I'm going to turn this off now so that I don't forget. Since I have this OG one, I'm just going to remove this because I don't really need these planning. It just depends on you though. You might want those, and you might want those as something that you can go back to and see if something diverted at a bigger level. But for me, I'm going to remove all of this. So we have our locations and everything. So now you'll see this is about half the size, and we're going to go to blueprint. We've got 21 sections. We are going to have ideas, style, characters, and location. This is all going to be created in a blueprint folder. We've got 3 ideas. We've got our 4 style guides. We've got our 4 main character files and then the side characters, and we've got 4 locations. So I'm going to go ahead and say create 16 documents. It's going to go through and create those for us. It said it did it. We're going to close. In this blueprints folder, you have ideas, styles, and the characters. And so if we come in here, you will see, and if I can make this a little bit longer so you can see, we've got everything that we need for our story background. And that's nicely, neatly in our blueprint file. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to leave these in their own thing. So I'm going to just create a folder, and I'm going to rename this Brainstorm. Okay. And I'm going to put my clean and my OG in here. Why not add it to the blueprint folder? Because I want to be able to turn on all of these items if I'm doing AI context prompts. If I'm doing the AI context chapter prompts, then I want to be able to toggle on him and have all of this toggled on to do those packets. And I don't want to worry about having the OG ones interfering with that. And I don't want redundant information. So I don't want the outline as well as that on. So I am going to, though, I'm going to close these just so that I can see a little bit better. And I am going to put this outline into the blueprint folder. That had a little hiccup. There we go. And I'm going to put the sequels into the brainstorm as well. So I'm going to close that back out. And we've got the outline here. So if I turn this on, the outline will go on along with all of our other story information. So now we're going to come back to outline. So we've parsed our blueprint and we've got these beautiful little folders. And now we've got all of this. So if I go to, oops, that's the wrong one. There we go, this one. So now I've got this, and I've also got my list, or I've got my grid of all of my chapters. So again, I would be going through all of these with a fine-tuned comb. I'd be making sure everything is the way I want them to be. And I would be being very conscious of what I'm doing here. But this is for a tutorial, so we are going to skip over that process and we're going to go straight into the next steps. Now, what you'll notice if you come to chapter 1 is that there's already one section. It automatically adds the chapter 1 with scenes into the chapter outline area. but we don't have chapters 3 through 18. So what I want to do is I want to come here, and you won't see it here, but if you go to grid or list view, the corkboard views, there's finalize outline. Here we go. So we've got current is chapter 1. We'll keep current, or you can remark with the asterisk. So I want consistency, so we're just going to go match. So it'll update those. It will show me how many scenes are going to be going into each chapter. And then here we have our additional documents. Do I want an AI context folder, and do I want the Story Bible folder? So I definitely want Story Bible. AI context is going to be up to you. If you are only going to be using the chapter outlines as the context to write the chapters, which is what I used to do, then you really don't need this, and you can just turn this off. So I'm going to go ahead and turn that off. We're going to just do Story Bibles, and we're going to do the parsing here. So it's going to update these two, and it's going to create everything else. Okay, so we're going to go create update. It's going to go through that. You can see those being added in the corner. And here we are, we're done. So if we come here and we expand, we've got 18 chapter files in the manuscript folder. And then if we come here, we also have Story Bibles, and we have 18 of those. Okay, and we are going to come up here, chapter 1. We already have one section, but we're going to have one of the 3 sections for each of these, because that is the chapter outline. And that is already set. So we're going to come back. We're going to make this smaller again. Really quickly, I want to show you, if we come out of focus and come back to library, it will now show you we spent 35, if you want to round up, 36 cents creating our brainstorming and our outline. When you're doing the parsing, all of that is machine parsing. It's not the AI using it, so you're not wasting tokens on separating those out. It's just nicely put into an area that you can now access. So what we're going to now look at with prompts, we are going to go to writing romance. We have a write draft romance. And you will see here, this has previous chapters, past 2 chapters. So it's 2. Let's edit that. I actually think this might be the wrong variable. Yeah, there shouldn't be a space there, I don't think. Okay, so we've got active documents, and then we've got previous chapters, and we've got the scene breakdown for the chapter words before. We are going to remove that. We are going to say the chapter outline, chapter and scene outline. Oh, I just saw that. Okay. And the scene breakdowns for the chapter are, oops, I didn't want to hide that. Where are we? Chapter outline is chapter outline. Okay, and then it says expand this into a full draft, designed to compel the target reader while maintaining narrative flow and consistency with established style. Start in media res, avoid repetition unless for literary effect, and minimize em dashes and metaphors. Should delight and rivet romance readers with delicious banter and swoon-worthy moments. And I'm just going to say, and the POV and the scene breakdowns for the chapter are in chapter outline, because that chapter outline showed the POV character, and that's important. Previous chapters on chapter 1, there won't be any. On chapter 3, there will be. Starting on chapter 2, it will have chapter 1. So we're good to go there. And I'll show you what that's going to look like here in a second. If we were just using chapter outline, I'm going to do a whole video on the AI context packets. So we're not going to get into that in this video, but we will in another video. So we're in chapter 1. So if we look here, we've got POV as Paloma. So we've got that. And then in style, it should say, I want to make sure that it does this. Okay, POV, tone. I'm wondering if we've got a prose tendency. Do we have first person anywhere in this? We might have it in our, okay, let's check in our AI system prompt. Settings, we've got core fantasies. Okay, banter forward, tension, protagonist. Okay, so writing style, I'm just going to really quickly do POV, first person, past is pretty normal. Present is also workable. Let's do present. And we are going to save that. And what I'm going to do, because I don't trust myself, is I'm going to go to the clean one, and I'm going to do a find third should give us, okay, there's no results there. First, search, okay. Person, search. Okay, let's just make sure the exact same person, okay. Only person, personality, personality, personality. So, okay. And one more, okay. So I'm just making sure that in our blueprint, it didn't say a point of view. So it didn't, so we're good there. And I don't see it anywhere here. She thinks in terms of action items. So because we have it there, it should be good. I am also just going to put it at the top of author voice. POV, first person. Okay. And we got that saved. Okay. So now if we are doing the no AI context, right? So what I want is potentially I want to turn these on for Palomas and turn them off for Grams. We could have them turned on regardless, but not necessarily necessary. So we're going to turn on author voice and tone rules. Ideas, we don't really need. And then characters, we would have global turned on and the side characters, not the arcs. That would basically be for us. And then depending on the location, if the location would be featured, we could turn this on. So we're not going to turn that on for chapter 1, I don't think. Let's look at see what happens in chapter 1. Do we have a location that needs to be turned on? I think we're probably okay. And then something else that you might want words before also brought into this, which would be something like having the fact that they're going to be meeting in real life for the first time in this, that kind of stuff. You could turn that on. I would not have outline turned on. You only want the chapter outline turned on. So we've got the author and tone. We're going to turn on POV Paloma. We're not going to have the arcs turned on because that would have to be added in between. And we're not going to turn on any of the locations for this current setup. Okay. And then we are here. We would come to prompts. Again, we would see here. So we've got active documents. We've got past 2 chapters. We've got the chapter outline. These check marks mean that all 3 variables have been found. If we go to resolved, you will see we've got the style. So we've got active documents up here. If we come to final, actually, it will show we've got context, active documents. We've got it right here. So that's good. And then if we come all the way down, okay, chapter outline. So this is the chapter outline. Previous chapters are not there because this is chapter 1. Okay, and then we've got chapter outline, chapter 1. This is our POV, end of chapter outline, end of context, and then here is the task. So we've got all of that set up. Don't worry about this showing nothing. 1, there is nothing, but 2, because this is dynamic, it resolves up here. It won't resolve down here. And so we can go ahead and I'm going to make sure that I'm in here. I wouldn't be writing with Gemini. I usually only do my planning with Gemini, and then I would switch to Claude or GPT 5.1 or AI on if it was a little bit spicier. You could do Grok for that as well. Let's see, what do we want? You know what? Let's try actually doing this with Sherlock. Okay, we're gonna come back down here. We don't need 8,000 anymore. This is another thing too. So with this, if we go to raw, this doesn't have a word count. Depending on the model, adding a word count will do worse for quality as well as for length. Typically what I found is the majority of the good models for writing fiction, if you have 2 to 4 scenes that are fleshed out with conflict and plot beats and all of that jazz, typically it will flesh that out to an appropriate length on its own. But you could easily come in here and say word count should be, finished word count should be between 2,500 and 3,000 or 2,000 and 3,000. So let's actually see. We'll see if Sherlock does better. If it does okay lengthwise without adding anything into the prompt. We'll go back to prompts. I always do this because I'm just like want to make sure that my mouse is in the right spot. We are in chapter 1. We've got our model set. We are going to come here. We're going to scroll down and we're going to go ahead and execute the prompt. This was really fast, by the way. Okay. For a second, I thought it was going to stop there. I was like, oh my God, that was bad. I have noticed doing some tests with Sherlock, it has a tendency to have its own word count at the end. I think it might be that they're trying to increase word counts. Okay, so that's 715 words. That's very short, especially for having two different. So we've got the arrival and then we've got great escape across the town square. So we're going to reject this and we're going to come here and we're going to edit the prompt. So we're going to say into a full draft of 2,500 to 3,000 words. So we're going to add that in. We're going to update and we're going to see if that does better. So we're going to come back because we've edited. If you edit the prompt from the prompt doc, you want to make sure to back out and come back in so that it's using the new prompt that you just edited it to. So we're here, and then we're going to go execute and see if it does better. Sometimes it will say scenes, which it's probably pulling from up here to be for some point. So we'll see. Sometimes it does do scene breaks. You can just remove those and usually replace the next scene with a scene break object. And we can do that here in a second as we see how it does. All right, we're already doing a better word count. So we'll see how close we get to 2,500. The models can't actually count individual words. Always put that into the front of your mind. And another thing too is like sometimes it will do better with word count. So this did 1,500. Nowhere close to 2,500, but it did do, twice as much as it did the first time. And we have scene 2 here. Okay, so that's when it happens. So sometimes the scenes blur together, so we could actually just remove that. Then it happens, the snapback goes. That would be fine. And updated checklist priority. Cami, so this would be a text message. Love that. See, and it says word count 2,784. It's not. Probably that's pretty close for the actual tokens because it sometimes can count tokens. So that might be actually a correct token count. It's definitely not a correct word count. We've got word count here, but we've got that. And here we go. So I would just remove those. If it was a harsh edge for the scene, I would have come here and just done scene break, but it was a clean edge. So June's home of the solstice brew. Cami, are you there yet? So we've got some nice text messages brought in. Yes, Mio, the jawline. Okay. Dinner check-in, still 1. Scout site 2. Research gram 3. Urgent. Confirm if soulmate 4. I actually don't hate this. Might have to read through it more. But if I were using Claude, I'll just go into that. If I were using Claude, Claude generally does worse, not only with the actual finished words, but it will shorten or it will stretch out. So you'll end up with filler. So I don't generally recommend doing a word count with Claude. I would probably leave that out. But some of the models do better with it. I would say AION does better with it. I would say maybe Grok, depending on how many scenes you have, and same with GBT. Just play with it is always my suggestion, because what I think is better and worse is incredibly subjective because this is writing. And so that's something to keep in mind, is it's very subjective and you really need to read through and figure out yourself. But now if I come to chapter 2 and I'm here and I close out of this because I was silly, but if I'm in chapter 2 now, right, we have passed 2 chapters. So if I come here and I go to resolved and we come down here, so we have our chapter outline right here, and then you'll see past chapters. Now there is a past chapter. There is past chapter 1 that is now involved here because where does it start? There we go. Past chapters, chapter 1. So now, because there is a chapter that can be added as context, it will be. And same thing for chapter 3 and chapter 4 and chapter 5. And I don't have to go through and turn this on and turn this on and then turn that one off and turn this one on. And I don't have to go back and forth and back and forth and back and forth and back and forth. Now, if I had POV Paloma, so if I were doing this, then I would switch to POV Grant, and then we could switch to Grant now because Grant is talking, because we have Graham is talking. So we could just switch those back and forth, and that's up to you. You could probably turn both of those on and be completely fine as well. That's up to you as well. And then what I would probably do is I would look at the arcs for them and write in notes into the chapter outline. So I would go into the outline, and in these with the different scenes, I would even potentially turn on their arcs. So the global and the other, I would turn off probably pretty much everything else. And then you could talk with this file. You can still do AI generation into the outline file because that's what we did initially. But you could come down here and say, hey, I have these arcs. Where would those fit in? Can you rewrite the scenes for me using the same format as above and include in where those arcs land for everything and emphasize where those arcs are happening or where those transformations are happening? And you could do that. Now, you will notice the emotional beats. That arc is pretty much at least lightly touched on into those scenes. So that's just something else that you could do. And this is another one that I would play with for the purpose of subjective better worse scenarios. But in prompts, again, if we come back to blueprinting and we come here, so this shows that it should have purpose, conflict, emotional beat, a romantic movement, hook into the next scene. Now it says each scene includes. What you could add here is to add in, have each of those things involved in like a 1 paragraph or 2 paragraph summary of each scene. And each summary should include this. And that way you would get more of a paragraph. Again, depends on the model and depends on your subjective preference, but sometimes I've seen the paragraph setup work better. Other times this kind of bullet point works really well. So it just depends. And the models are always getting smarter and always getting better. So that's just something else to keep in mind. But that is how you would do the blueprinting. So we went through a full brainstorm using the blueprinting sequence, which the blueprinting sequence and those prompts are actually going to be in the new defaults, the blueprinting prompts. And that sequence, I don't think I have default sequences. So that's something I'll probably be adding to, is a default sequence for the blueprinting. And then we went through the full brainstorm. We went through the full outline. We went through parsing that blueprint into these individual folders, adding the outline to that folder. We went through parsing that outline into individual chapters that all have a chapter outline. And you no longer have to copy and paste, and you no longer have to do nearly as much toggling on and off. Again, like you might be toggling on and off some of the locations or some of the characters and the POV voices, but you're not going to have to worry about toggling on and off the right chapter. You're not going to have to worry about toggling on and off the right outline file. You're not going to have to copy and paste outlines, chapter outlines into the file. And again, once you export, those chapter outlines won't be in the export, but you can see them right here in the context deck. And that was all really important for me and how I work. So that is how all that works. And then right here, we had not started. So this is now drafting, or I would switch this to editing probably because I would need to go through and edit this. So that's now editing. And you can see that says that has a little that has an orange dot that corresponds to the editing process. And then I would know that this has already been created, but needs to be edited, so forth and so forth. And if we come back to library and you go to list, you will actually see here, we have 6% editing, 94% not started. As those change, that will also change. It also shows that we have 1,520 words out of the 40,000 because those 1,500 words are the only words we have in a chapter file in the manuscript folder. So those are the only ones that actually count toward the total. Also shows again that we spent 36 cents so far on this project. So hopefully that's helpful. I am going to be using this cover as another cover tutorial to do affinity, so that we'll do a vector cover next. And so that will be something to look out for. And then we will be doing videos upcoming about the AI context packets and how to use those properly. So I will see you in the next one.